Okay, so happy Thursday. So this is a practice talk for EuroVis 2017, right? So EuroVis is a really important conference, right, in visualization. Probably it's the second most important conference, so to speak, of Europe's largest conference on visualization. And so we always give a practice talk before going there and practice in front of, and giving a talk in front of a live audience. And just as a little reminder, I thought it would just refresh your memories on why it's good to give a practice talk before you give the actual talk. I wrote some notes. So the reasons go from the most obvious to the less obvious in this order. So the most obvious reason to give a practice talk is to improve the quality, right? When you give a practice talk, you make errors, the audience notices errors, and you can fix them, right? So the quality of the talk goes up. Generally, your slides will have some errors usually, and things like that. It's also an educational experience, so you'll give a talk, and you won't notice that there are some things you can improve, so you get some audience feedback on things that you can improve or things that weren't clear. So it's a collective educational exercise, right? So that's pretty obvious, right? It also makes you look smarter or more intelligent, right? So when you get to the conference and you've already rehearsed it once, and you give a better quality presentation, you look more intelligent, right? And it's nice to look more intelligent, right? And the not as obvious reasons are the audience appreciates it. The audience really appreciates a good quality talk. If you think about it, for example, at EuroVis, there are typically 250 to 300 people there from maybe 25 different countries-ish. Some of them have come all the way from maybe even Australia or South America or China to be there, right? So they paid lots and lots of money and put in massive effort to get there in front of your presentation, right? And if you deliver something maybe that's not very good quality, for such an audience that's invested so much time and effort to get there, it's not very nice, right? So it's good your audience appreciates it if you give a practice talk and and they can see that you put in some effort. And there is another reason that's not so obvious as well. It's to give a good talk is actually social. It's a social exercise. And you're being social by giving a good talk. So what does that mean? So if you're in the audience and you see a good speaker, you actually would like to tell that speaker, oh, if I ever get a chance to tell that speaker I enjoyed their talk, I'll do so. People will come up to you and say, hey, I liked your talk. You know, you will converse and you will meet more people if you give a good talk, right? So it's actually a social exercise. And that's what a conference is for, right? It's to learn about what's happening in a field, but it's also to socialize. It's a social exercise because people are social, right? If you give a bad talk, I'm going to say a bad talk that clearly shows you haven't put in an effort, that's also antisocial. If you give a bad talk just because you're nervous, that's not antisocial. If you give a bad talk and it's obvious that you haven't tried or prepared, then that's actually an antisocial exercise. Somebody that's put in tremendous effort and time and money into seeing your talk, and then you might even offend some of your audience members if they see you haven't given it like your best effort. And everybody that goes to conferences has been to really bad talks and has had this unsocial feeling or unsocial, antisocial impression. Like you don't want to meet that person after they give their talk, right? And sometimes if it's, you could even get the urge to leave the room, right? So it can be, a bad talk can actually be an antisocial exercise. So we don't want that, we're social. So we're gonna give a practice talk today. And I have my notebook, right? I still give practice talks. I have my notebook, I'm gonna write down the time, how long it takes. I have an expectation as to how long it's supposed to take. And I might even take notes. If I see a mistake in the middle, I'll make a note and all that stuff. So I still give practice talks, right? Even though I've been talking for a long time now. So, let's do it. Anybody have questions or comments before we get started? So my name is Bob Laramee, and the title of this talk is SOS, a survey of surveys mapping the landscape of survey papers and information visualization. It's quite a mouthful, actually. So this is what the organization of the talk looks like. So we're going to start out by discussing our introduction and our motivation behind conducting a survey of surveys. We're going to talk about some of the challenges involved with literature searches and survey papers. We're going to talk about our search methodology, how we went about searching for all those amazing surveys. We're going to talk about the classification, how we organized all the surveys and information visualization, and how we classified them and categorized them, which we spent a long time discussing. We're also going to discuss what's in there and what's not in there, so the scope of the survey. What does it include and what it doesn't include? And then we're going to go over a few examples of surveys that are included in the SOS. And so that's the basic outline. Now that's part one. So I'm going to give part one, and then Liam is going to give part two. And I'm not going to say what Liam's organization looks like because I want to give some suspense, some excitement. So SOS, I think everybody knows this, but SOS is the International Distress Signal. Right? It's 3 dots and 3 dashes followed by 3 dots. I actually had a fantasy of the audio file, like playing the audio file. I forgot to load that up. So when Liam started his PhD, we were looking for literature survey topics. We were interested in smart city visualization. So we had a meeting and I thought, oh, it would be so nice to have a smart city visualization literature survey. But I noticed there was already one, right? There is actually a book that I noticed at the EuroVis conference 2 years ago on smart city visualization. And then I thought, okay, we'll just have to find a topic that fits inside the smart city visualization scope. Maybe it's more narrow. I don't know if you remember these discussions. So I said, Liam, let's try a survey of traffic, basic traffic, like bus traffic, maybe car traffic, train traffic, just transport, of transport data. Let's do a survey of transport data and visualization. But of course we have to make sure that there are no existing surveys. So Liam comes back a week later, at our next meeting it says, oh, there's already a survey on transport visualization. And I just thought, really? Is that true? I've never seen that before. And he shows it to me. I thought, well, amazing. So we have to think about something else. And I don't know what the next thing that we were trying to look for, but I believe there was another suggestion after that. And then I asked you to check for existing surveys. And then you came back the next week again and said, sorry, there's a survey on that topic. I don't know if you happen to remember what the next one was.
It was human movement, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, yes, that's right. Accelerometer data and human movements. That's right, that's right. So after a few iterations of that discussion, we really thought, okay, it's time. Now is the time to do the survey of surveys. This idea has been in the community for a few years now. It's not necessarily only our idea. A lot of people had this idea at the same time. It was just a matter of time before somebody did it. So we decided, okay, this is the time to do the survey of surveys. So everybody knows that surveys are really valuable tools, right, to handle the literature explosion, right? The literature explosion and the volume of research literature has always been a major challenge for in computer science. And Jim Blinn identified this back in 1998 as one of the top future challenges of computer graphics, right? And the problem is worse now. It's even more intense now. But we've gotten to the point where there are lots of survey papers. So we're taking that step up, that quantum step up, and doing the first survey of surveys for information visualization, which I love. Actually, I love this topic. So what did we look for? Here's where we looked. So we looked at the annual EuroVis conference proceedings, right? Since 2014, there has been a star track to EuroVis. The survey, a lot of survey papers used to be published in the Eurographics conference, so the annual Eurographics conference, and that's included in the Computer Graphics Forum journal, although not many in information visualization were published there. We checked the IEEE TVCG journal, another main source of surveys. We checked Pacific Viz, we checked the VAST conference before it turned into the TVCG journal. And we checked the Journal of Visual Languages and Computing because that's where some of the surveys were published before the visualization community even started. We also found some very old ones in the CHI proceedings. That's not in this list. The Information Visualization Journal, and we checked the ACM Computing Surveys Journal, which we didn't find any survey papers in, any information visualization survey papers. And of course we checked the references inside each of the survey papers. And I noticed a lot of the survey papers while I was reviewing papers. So I'd be reviewing some papers. Some papers we discovered just by me, like, or one of us having a conversation with somebody and then realizing, I remember I was having a conversation with Robert Cassara at the Viz conference, and then I remembered, oh, he has a survey paper that we forgot, for example. So this is a little summary of our search methodology. This number is a little bit outdated, so the latest number that I remember is 89 that I counted. This is how we classify the survey papers. So we started with the information visualization pipeline. So this is a well-known pipeline published by Stuart Card in the Readings and Information Visualization book, one of the older information visualization books that we just talked about. So that's the pipeline there. It starts with data-oriented processes and data transformation. There's a data-centered phase, Then the data gets a visual mapping right onto colors and lines and edges, polygons, points, and so on. And then there are view transformations and rendering stages, right? And then finally there's the perception and interaction part of the pipeline at the very end. So that's our sort of our main classification, is the information based on the information visualization pipeline. And then we spent a lot of time discussing the second dimension of the classification, which was the more difficult one to identify, which are topics, the popular topics in information visualization. And these are the same topics that you often find the papers classified in at a conference, in paper sessions. So these are clusters that emerged naturally after we identified the popular topics in information visualization. So we have data-centric topics like data types and text. We have multivariate and hierarchical topics, literature topics, right, very common, like parallel coordinates and glyphs. We have graphs and networks, right? We're going to see lots of surveys there. Geospace and time, we have coordinated multiple views, and then we have a bunch of specialized applications like finance, healthcare, security systems, software visualization and frameworks, and then we have the rest, so to speak, which are surveys that try to provide a more general overview that cover multiple topics along the y-axis. So what is included and what's not included? So included are information visualization survey papers and visual analytics survey papers. And they are published refereed papers, so they're either published in a conference, workshop perhaps, or in a refereed journal. So that leaves out some things, right?
I think we avoided workshops.
Did we avoid workshops? I know, yeah, maybe we don't have many workshop surveys in there. What's not included? So we don't include scientific visualization, we don't include computer vision, right, closely related topics. We don't include graph theory, so there are lots of survey papers in these other topics. And we don't include computer graphics. So those are all closely related topics, and we don't include the survey papers because it would become unmanageable. We have some content that we place in focus or we emphasize, and some that we place sort of in context, following the traditional focus and context. So we have a focus and context survey of surveys. So in focus is all the surveys that are published from 2010 onwards and that are published in sort of the higher visibility venues in journals like EuroVis, Viz, IEEE, TVCG, and Computer Graphics Forum. And then we have some papers that aren't specifically survey papers, but they might be called comparison papers that compare many techniques with each other, but they're not necessarily literature surveys. We do include those in our summary overview table, but they're not a focus inside for content. So that's an overview of the SOS. It's kind of small font, so this is the probably the most important page in the survey that summarizes every survey and provides an overview of each survey included. And that the last time I counted, there were 89 of them. So the ones highlighted in green are the main focus. So there you'll find a more description of them inside. And they're from 2010 onwards, right, in the major journals and conferences. Then we have some in yellow. So these are still included in the they're in journals and conferences that are not necessarily the primary ones. They're outside of EuroVis, Viz, TBCG, and Computer Graphics Forum, and the high visibility places. And then we have surveys in pink that are prior to 2010. And so it's interesting to see some of the older surveys, like ones that were published even in the 80s. So there people published surveys and information visualization before the first information visualization. And it's interesting to see where, like in CHI, for example, in the Journal of Programming Languages, visual programming languages. And I was going to, since it's a small font, I was actually going to try to zoom in here so we can see it a little bit better. Is this going to work? So if we zoom in, there's the information visualization pipeline, and then we can start to see the actual surveys. Right, these are the data-centric surveys. Right, ones that focus on data types, text. So text visualization is a relatively new subtopic in information visualization, but there are already 10-ish surveys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 surveys in text viz, even though it only started roughly around 2005. Right. So the surveys are really up to date. Right. There are some hierarchical data-centric surveys, then we have our multivariate surveys. Lots of graphs and networks surveys. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 surveys on graphs and networks. And you can see that they're all very recent. Well, not all of them, but most of them are very recent. Right, starting with the first one back in 2000. Geospatial and time, the coordinated multiple view surveys, and then we have our application-oriented surveys. Right, we see there are a surprising number of surveys in software visualization. Right, and surprisingly, some of them, like here's one from 1986. We were very surprised to find things like that. And so on, and here are some overview surveys, lots of overview surveys. Here's a little snapshot. I tried to derive some interesting data. So we have roughly 89 surveys. These are all approximate numbers, by the way. I think the 89 might be the only one that's not approximate. Now, just as an envelope calculation, I took 10 of the surveys and computed the average number of references. So out of the 10 I grabbed, there was an average of 105 references, right? And I just thought, as a fun speculative exercise, to try to just imagine what amount of literature does the SOS represent? Is it possible to even speculate about this? Like, how might we go about speculating or deriving what this represents? So if we take a guess, this is just a guess, that 50% of all the references are redundant. In other words, every survey has 50% of new references that are not already included in some other survey. Just as a guess. Then we have approximately 4,700 references, unique references total, trying to get rid of the redundant ones by the SOS. And just as another guess, if we assume that each survey includes 47 unique pages, 47 unique articles rather, published articles, and each one of those articles has an average length of 10 pages, which is another guess, right? Then we get to 47,000 pages total. Just as this has a lot of uncertainty, this exercise, but I just wanted to get a feel for what is the volume here of literature that we're talking about, and to make it another, just a fun kind of derivation, that's approximately 94 500-page books. Like if we were to break it down into books, which are more consumable units, then that's what it would look like. And as far as I can see, this estimate seems reasonable. It is some serious guesswork there. And this is the volume of surveys since 1985, right? So we have some in 1985, right? And they're color-coded by the different categories, and then we have some more in 1990. And then suddenly in 2005, there's sort of an explosion of survey papers, right? Especially after 2010, right? So the longer the time goes, the higher the number of survey papers gets. We also derive a classification of classifications. So what does that mean? So the classification of any survey is a really important element, right? It's one of the critical elements of any survey paper. How is the literature categorized? How is it organized? Right? Because this is really a critical element to any survey. So we did a kind of classification of classifications, a meta classification of the surveys. And this is what it looks like. There are different kinds of classifications, right? And they have different ways that they're organized. So the C in the red bold-faced font here represents some sort of category or attribute of the literature, right? Typically a category. And the L's typically represent a paper, how the paper is classified. So in this style, this two-dimensional style, every paper has, there's a set of categories on both the X and the Y axis, and then every paper is put into a unique location on the two-dimensional classification, and then we call that unique mapping, where every piece of literature appears exactly once in the classification. That could be rearranged like this, so that A and B are equivalent. They could be rearranged so that both categorical mappings are along the x-axis, and then the literature is on the y-axis. And that can also be rearranged in the third configuration there. We also have classifications that don't necessarily map each paper into exactly one bin, so to speak. And we call those 1 to n mappings, where the same piece of literature can fall into multiple bins or categories or classifications, and they have the same kinds of configurations. It's just not a unique mapping. It means that it can appear in more than one location. And if we take the surveys that are in focus, we can then characterize their classification. So these are the survey papers that we focus on, and then we characterize their classification. So their classification could be one-dimensional, two-dimensional, like in the matrix style, or three-dimensional if it's a matrix that adds another attribute like color, for example. The classifications can be linear or hierarchical. They can feature indirect mappings, unique mappings, or 1 to n mappings. And that's an overview of all the different classifications. And we can see some things. For example, a lot of papers prefer the 2D classification style, and a lot of them include a hierarchical structure. This is just one of the surveys. We're not going to go over all 89 surveys featured in the SOS. Here's an example of one of the surveys, and we focus on 3 things. We focus on the conceptual idea behind the survey. That's the first part, the concept. we focus on the classification, what kind of, how is the literature classified. And then we also focus on the future work, right? So in this survey, this is a taxonomy of visual cluster separation factors and scatter plots, right, by Settlemyer et al. From 2012. So it looks at the ways that data is separated within class. In other words, how we can distinguish individual data points that are in the same cluster, right? Using properties like the number, the frequency, the size, and the density, and so on. And then how can we distinguish between clusters that are distinct, right? Two distinct clusters. So there's some overlap there in how we can do that, right? How the frequency and the variance of the frequency, the variance of size, and so on. Right, this is a two-dimensional indirect mapping, so we don't actually see explicit citations to explicit papers in the classification, so we call it indirect. Right. In the future work section, there's a special focus on how this taxonomy could be extended to include new kinds of data characteristics, both within class and between class. And here is a sample multivariate visualization survey. It's the first survey that we know of on parallel coordinates. So this is a hierarchical organization, right? This was published at EuroGraphics, the EuroGraphics conference in 2003, the first time. And then the space of parallel coordinates literature is subdivided into geometry, image generation, image analysis, and interaction. Right? And then these are subdivided further: projective geometry, interpolation. And you can notice that some of the subcategories appear more than once. Like samples appears more than once, axes appears more than once, and so on. We call this a hierarchical indirect mapping, again, because we can't explicitly see the papers in the diagram. And there's a special emphasis on evaluating techniques based on their applicability, correctness, and usability and performance in the future work part of that survey. Okay, thanks for your attention. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, so
the only thing was if we go back to the classification, oh no, the main table.
this one?
Yeah, so this isn't a question, it's more. So when you mentioned the other ones,
Yes.
you said that they were all not in the main journals. That's not entirely correct.
Okay.
So when we were doing it, we only expected, when we first started, we only expected like 30 survey papers.
Yes.
And we very quickly like hit our page limit. So there's a lot of, interesting, or there's a lot of papers or survey papers from journals that we just couldn't add to the paper because
The space limitations. So I should say something like space limitations more than like publication venue.
Yeah. So all the other ones are within our emphasis, but we couldn't put in. Ideally, we want to go over them all.
Redo them. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're all within our emphasis, but we couldn't. So.
Okay, so the yellow is more about space limitations.
So they normally met, about 50% of them met all of our scope, but they can be added into.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. For example, you can see at the bottom all of the yellow ones. That's because we found them all at roughly the same time, which was right at the end, so we couldn't really add them.
Yeah. And we included surveys after the review process too.
Yes.
It's after there was a multi-stage review process, but we kept finding new surveys and including them. Good point, very good point. Any other questions or comments?
That one there, it's, you can't really, you got the black writing on the grey in the first column, and you can't really make it out.
This, yes, it's very small.
Yeah, and well, it's the same with the classifications table. You were referring to it a lot as well, so it kind of needed the attention.
Now, when I, with this one, I did a zoom in.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad because of
Did that help?
Yeah, but still not that clear though, to be honest. It looks a bit out of, like the resolution isn't that high.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty high resolution, but that's script size full page. So it's just massive, so it's quite hard to...
I think a good tip is if you want to repair it, because you wasn't zoomed in, I think you have two options. Maybe you could break the classifications so it will appear in each page quickly. Or you just
So when
don't
you
need
zoom,
to
maybe when you
go
zoom in,
details. Rather you give the asides, like how many yellows, how many greens aside of the page. Otherwise you just, if it's like for classification according to the pipelines, so each step of the pipeline for one slide, this will give you space.
I think the other table was worse though, because he was specifically talking about the column titles and they weren't that clear.
You couldn't read them.
Yeah. I think there's scope, you almost need to just make the table in PowerPoint in a way, just or to actually increase the size of the headers.
The actual font. Yeah.
Um,
I could have done a zoom in on that one too.
Yeah, I guess as well.
you could, it might be a good idea to show the full thing, you know, briefly, and then when you actually describe it, have another slide that is the high resolution, and then you can just talk about that specific section.
Overview and then focus on details.
Yeah. I tried to do a zoom in,
Yeah.
a live zoom in using Adobe
yeah.
Adobe Acrobat for that to resolve that conflict. Yeah.
Because both the images are like 3,000 pixels, so the resolution should be fine.
Yeah. I noticed I went a few minutes over too.
That's fine.
And yes, there's a chance that I'm going to take out that slide,
Okay.
that second table
Yeah.
that shows all those details on the classification of classifications. Sometimes what I do is I will not necessarily take it out, but I will put the slides, the extra slides,
Yeah.
after the end, so I can still talk about them if somebody asks about them in the question and answer session. So that one's going to be a candidate to get pushed to the question and answer session in case somebody. But I think it would be great if I had more time, which I don't. But if I had more time, I would have done a zoomed in view of that and then started to talk about it a little bit more. But I realized, there's not enough time for a zoomed in version of this, so we're just going to go over it quickly. But I can see that the audience isn't happy about that. So I probably will just move that one to the question and answer session.
It's a bit hard to see on the screen.
So the same comment then for the first, there's an example of classification used.
Laramee.
This one,
Yeah, and you talked a bit about some of those and
it's too small
Yeah.
to read. Yeah, that's a good point.
You might be able to extend that across the screen a bit more and then move the font.
Can you do it sort of like when you click, it just zooms it out, zooms in on that specific bit?
I don't know. I don't know, I wanted to keep the presentation not too
Yeah.
complicated.
Well, I just
Maybe-
meant like this, we have the 3 points underneath it.
Yeah, like I did with the second one. The second one has
Yeah.
the 3
Yeah.
points underneath.
That one was fine then.
Yeah, maybe I'll try
I'd
that.
be able to get away with that.
Yeah.
This is more about my part, but
Yeah.
your snapshot section.
Yeah.
That was, I assume a lot of that was based on the citation chart. So should I not go over that?
Which one? Which
Uh,
slide are we talking
So
about?
this you snapshot of the SOS.
This one?
Go forward. Forward.
Forward.
Yeah.
This
That
one?
one,
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of that information was taken from citation grids, right?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
This was just me playing around, actually.
Oh, okay.
Could-
A lot of that information is in site chart.
That's good to know. So
So
what,
it-
what information is in, you mean service?
No. The imagery made with the citations, you could have got a lot of that information from there.
What could I have gotten?
For example, the year range.
The year range, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, the
Right.
total amount of surveys. I think you have the total reference. You have the reference totals as well.
That, you mean in that bar chart,
Yeah.
right? So it would have been, it's difficult to see the average, just get the
Yeah,
average.
the
from that bar
averages
chart.
aren't, but the totals are. So you could have added them
Okay.
all up and then
Okay.
said, okay, here's the total.
Yes. I just took 10 of them,
Right. Okay.
and that would be this, taking 10 bars. So I could have like counted all of them, you're saying, and then,
Yeah, well, it's just because you can get 3 of the points from there, and we weren't sure about which one of us was going to talk about it. I thought that might be you talking about it without
Yeah.
actually bringing it up. So
yeah, I think that in your part, I would expect you to show that figure.
okay,
I would expect you, this is just me playing around, but I would definitely show that figure that you're talking about in yours.
okay,
And say, here's really what it looks like, all the surveys with the years spanned, because that's very informative, that table, that figure. The mystery really is the 50% redundant references. This is
Yeah.
the mystery. Like, how many of these are redundant? That's the big. So I
Yeah.
guess we would have to write like a special program to actually do that and figure that out.
You think like all the ones in the text survey, there'd be a lot more, isn't it, redundant? There's
yes,
the
it's
text
probably
Yes.
more redundancy than 50%.
Some of them are going to have more than 50% redundancy, but some of them are going to have a lot
Yeah.
less.
I
too.
think
Like
I
the
think
first one, it's going to
Yeah.
you're going to have 0. Yeah, so that's the big question. How many of these references are redundant? That is the big speculation here. And 50% is kind of like a good guess.
I think it's
It's just
big.
halfway,
Is it-
isn't it?
I wouldn't say it's a good guess, but I think no one can really fault you for it, and it makes the numbers bigger, which is always good.
Maybe somebody will know. Maybe somebody will be like, Bob, you're wrong. Find out exactly how many, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun research project.
Yeah, that could be a 30-year project.
That'd be good.
I actually think that's what one of the reviewers wanted when they wanted a tree
Yes.
track. They wanted the redundant
Really breaks down
references.
metadata.
But I feel like that's not something you should give someone 2 weeks to do.
That is challenging. It
Yeah.
is challenging, that task.
Yeah.
Somebody will probably do that at some point. But we just haven't gotten around to it yet. But it would make an interesting little project. And the other strategy it's not easy either, is just to think, okay, the first conference in Viz was in 1990, so there have been 27 of those, but then it's still mixed up between InfoVis and SciVis. And then you can try to look at the individual conferences and count the number of actual publications. That's another strategy. And probably that's no easier, I guess.
I guess some of the references as well don't actually reference work, they might just reference...
Web pages or something.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That's true. Yeah. So that's the that number. This bullet point is going to probably spark a lot of discussion, and I can live with that. I'm fine with that. If people want to argue about that, that is fine with me. It's at least something fun to talk about. Like if somebody gets angry, I don't think anybody's going to get angry about it. If somebody really wants to talk about that, that's fine. I just say.
So the other thing is that table comes from, yeah, that comes from SOS-A. Well, the table does. You didn't mention that.
Okay.
But I can bring that up in mind.
Yes.
I just assume
Yes.
if the author's there, he might be a bit like, they didn't mention it at all.
Yes, I'm happy if you include that.
Yeah.
Even if there's some overlap, don't worry about that. Nobody's gonna get upset if there's a little bit of overlap between our parts. And I'm purposely good. Now, somebody that's really anal retentive would say, no, we're gonna have one outline, and it's gonna be slide number 2 at the beginning. I'm gonna say, no, let's break the tradition. We're breaking traditions, with this, the SOS. So you're going to have your own outline at the beginning, your own slide number 2.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave, I like the leaving the suspense in there. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen in part 2. Not that we know anyways, but I think it's fine to have it divided into 2, really independent and all that stuff.
You sent me the PowerPoint.
Yes, I can also send you a copy of this.
That would be good.
Yeah.
The university logo's out of date now as well.
Is it?
Yeah, they changed it.
What happened? What changed?
Very subtle.
Okay, I'm probably gonna be too lazy to update that.
I think it's like the little roof bit, they extend it down over the sides.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
They
There might
changed
be
the colour a bit.
there might be a little wavy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the colour I think is a bit darker now as
With
well.
Cass, do I have to put the logo on every slide?
No.
Just
I
press
might,
it again.
yeah.
Right, okay, that's fine.
You have to send it to Cass for their approval as well, don't
Do you? I've never done that.
I think I can do that, just give them something to do.
Something to do, some extra work.
That's right.
But yeah, I'm too lazy to update that. What I did consider was to remove it altogether.
Oh, yeah.
Some people believe that is just noise.
Yeah.
Some people, and some people would say that this is noise too. Just having I actually don't. There's a counter argument to that. Like, is that noise or is that not noise? Can anybody think of a counter argument?
If you walk in late, who's presenting?
Exactly. If you walk in late and you didn't see, or if you were like, I don't know, shopping on your phone at the beginning or something.
I think it's well for the title of project and the title of paper.
You would put the title in as well?
But it's too long.
Just put SOS.
Like, just put SOS, yeah.
SOS.
The same can be said about the Swansea University logo, like.
I'd say that's more likely to be noise than the name.
Yeah.
What's the point of 2 tildes there?
So 1 tilde means approximately, and 2 means really approximately. Yeah. But exactly.
You should put that in front of the 50% redundant
You should put 3 there.
Say it again, I didn't.
50% redundant reps, maybe we should have them.
Like 3 tildes? Yeah, you're right. There should be at least a tilde there.
Yeah.
You're right. That there should be something there. Yes. You're right.
You're not convinced by the numbers, Rich?
No, I am.
I don't think you mentioned anything particularly about the year range, but just to make sure you do know, there's like one reference that's saying 1886 of all of them. So don't be like, wow, that's really.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
It's just one reference.
It's an outlier.
Yes.
It's an outlier.
It is.
1886. Which one is that?
It's a
It's
parallel coordinates one.
1886.
Oh, I
Is
thought
it?
1986.
No,
1886 instead.
1886.
Ah.
It's
I thought
definitely
Parallel coordinates
1886.
is that old?
It was it's
thought it was
either that or
reference.
cartograms.
Yeah, I thought it was the
something.
cartograms one, but you might be right. There's some French mathematician somewhere in the parallel coordinates that
Oh, yeah.
talks about parallel coordinates.
Because I think that's Heinrich's. They
Yeah.
are parallel
Yeah,
coordinates, that's what
I
it
think
is.
you're right. Yeah. But cartograms also has a very old
Mhm.
citation in there
Yeah.
about something. I like the cartogram, the old cartograms, the hand-drawn cartograms. They're really cool. Really cool.
It was just like, just in case you were like, you decided
No,
to.
I remembered that. I remembered it, and I thought I did remember that because that's a good figure.
Yeah.
It's that figure, that amazing figure that you're going to show again with the year span and the number of
I'll
citations.
probably start with that.
That would be good. That would be good. Good questions and comments from the audience. Any other? The thing that I wish that this could go into a little bit more detail, actually, that's my kind of wish, but that's not, it's just not going to be possible. If anybody wants more detail, they have to download the PDF, they have to look at it. This one.
Can you go to, I think it's slide number 9 or 10. Yeah, it's this one.
It's small font as well.
It's not the font. I'm just confused because the first table,
Mm-hmm.
there's no columns underneath the C1 and C2. How does this work? The unique mapping.
The three versions of the same thing, so those three represent the same one.
Yeah.
Yes, they are three versions, three reorganizations of the same information.
Okay.
Except C only has one class.
Yeah.
Like you could make it 2 lists, but it was just a safe space because it might be a bit more confusing that way.
And the idea is that each L, like L1, can only appear once here. It can only appear once here and then here as well in the two different categories. So L1 can only appear once here as well. But whereas L1 can appear an arbitrary number of times in the 1 to n mapping. So here it appears twice. Oh no, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. There probably, yeah, it appears 4 times there, right, and it's 4 times there.
So A and B both represent the same thing in both of those, but they just drawn different ways.
It is confusing.
So
It is confusing. We
Mm.
talked about this.
for each classification, L can have one.
Why is it how?
L for literature.
It generally means literature with some
Yeah.
exceptions. And what I also didn't mention is we talked about this for months.
Yeah.
We were deriving the classification of classifications for a long time. This makes it look quick and easy, like, oh, this is just the way it is. It's really easy, and we talked about this for 5 minutes next time. It wasn't like that.
This was what I meant from the beginning. It just took me like
This took
2.5
forever.
months to emphasize what I actually meant.
I think from a Hammer's point of view, though, I think it does just look confusing as a slide like that. I'd read the paper, so I knew what it was about,
Yeah.
really. So I think coming in fresh, that slide's a bit confusing. Just as it is.
How about if there was a separator between the top and bottom tables? So the first example and the second one, make that clear. and then making an equal sign between A and B. Would that make it easier?
I guess.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Because those two are equivalent.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down. More amendments.
Oh, yeah, just maybe explain different representations of the same classifications.
Yeah.
But this is confusing.
Yeah.
It
Well,
is confusing.
yeah, the whole point of these tables was to state, well, you can make classifications in a lot of different ways, but normally they give you the same result, and some will just look better than others. Like in the second one, there's really only one of them that you use, or you want to use, which is B, because C, A are kind of hard to read.
In somewhere I think in your half, if you want, you can talk about this again, but somewhere, I think in the end, we say that some of these are better than others. For example, this one,
I don't think we do. Because,
really?
Yeah, because I didn't want to isolate any for being worse than others.
Okay. I wouldn't have minded had we said that, but this one is not as good as say these, or the 2D ones, because you can't see the gaps. If you just have a list of categories, for example, and a list of papers, you don't explicitly see gaps. Like these are topics that aren't covered. Whereas here you can explicitly see gaps. So you might think, oh, there's a survey paper that hasn't been written yet, right? You can see that in our, like, oh, if you want to write a survey paper, choose one of the empty boxes, right? This is showing the gaps. Whereas if it was in a continuous list, you couldn't see the gaps so easily. So that's why the 2D is better, the 2D organizations.
I remembered something that I was going to bring up. You don't actually mention the information, the modified version that we use. The
I
modified
forgot how we modified it. Do you remember how?
well, the titles compared to the
Okay.
original.
Yeah, that's true. We do modify it. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
I think it's.
You just show the original one and say we use
That's
that.
true. That's true. I have to be careful with my words. Also, the idea behind this slide was also because I knew you can't read the overview slide, so that's why I even showed this one in the first place. It's like now when we get to the big slide, you'll know what I'm talking about.
You might just be able to like take the first, the headers and just place it underneath the
In space there.
the taskbar, so you can say, oh, this is the original, and then we simplified it in order to make it look like this, and then they'll be able to read all of the topics before the actual table comes up.
Maybe.
I think if you can show our classification uses this one, you know, we've got the A unique mapping, isn't it? So A1 effectively, isn't it? We can say
Yeah.
the two categories down the axes.
That's right. We mentioned that in the paper,
Yeah.
like where ours
Okay.
falls into the. I didn't mention it here. Could have. I mean, this talk could
That's
be
before.
a lot longer, right?
Yeah.
It could be a lot longer. And if you know, in the I had the urge to present a lot more, like and present a lot more survey papers. Like seeing just 2 of the 89, that's nothing, you know.
I'm only gonna, I'll just forward the rest of them.
Or the other 87.
No, yeah, just you know, let's just go quickly through and give it 5 seconds each.
Yeah.
Slides.
Any other questions or comments? So the question, well,
Maybe I don't know the challenges and future work.
That's all.
yeah, that's right. So that's part 1.
Okay.
Part 2 is Liam. So I will, in the talk, by the way, in the actual talk, I was going to say to the audience, are there any questions? But if there are questions that are answered in part 2, I would just say that's going to be in part 2. That's a discussion for part 2.
Is that the standard format then, that you have questions in the middle if you've got two?
No, we're trying to break some of the standard traditions because they're so boring.
Yeah.
We want to do something new, something a little bit untraditional.
I suppose it makes it more memorable that way, doesn't it?
It does. It's a relief for the audience too.
Yeah, that's great.
When you're sitting there, if you know, oh, this is 45 minutes that you have to sit still or something. In fact, I forgot to say something, which was, if anybody has questions, feel free to interrupt me. I usually say that at the beginning. You don't have to wait until the end. Because if you know you have to sit for 45 minutes and wait till the end, it can be unpleasant, right? And it's a relief to the audience to say, oh, look, 20 minutes, we get a little break in the middle, and we can do whatever. Wake up.
Yeah.
These used to be at we presented a survey of FlowVis at Eurographics 2002, I believe, and it was 90 minutes long. 90-minute slot. Oh, yeah. Really tough for the audience to sit through that. This is also a 90-minute slot divided between 2 surveys. That was one survey, so we did 45 minutes, I did 45 minutes, and then the second guy did, Fritz posted 45 minutes. And the audience at the end, I think they were dead.
How do you have enough to say though for 90 minutes? That's so long.
It's always a paper, isn't it?
It's not very difficult when you get some practice. I know before I started, I remember the first time somebody said, oh, as a teaching assistant, and I was a teaching assistant, they said, actually, you're going to teach the class. You're not just going to be a demonstrator. You have to teach it. I didn't know that. My first reaction was, I think the most I have ever spoken in my entire life is maybe been 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I was like, how am I going to speak for almost an hour, like 3 times a week? That's crazy. That's just what happens when you start teaching stuff.
How long was it?
So it was 23 minutes, actually, so 3 minutes too long. So I'm going to take out that one table.
Okay.
Probably I'll be a little bit more nervous in the real setting.
It's going to go quicker, don't you?
So I might go a little bit quicker.
Yeah. I assume mine will be about 15 minutes by the end. It's fine.
45 minutes plus questions, or?
No, we're aiming for 40
minutes.
minutes and then 5 minutes questions and answers.
Okay.
I think it's fine if we don't use up 40 minutes. Nobody's going to mind. Nobody's going to mind. And some people might even be happy. And in fact, one of the things I really don't like, and I'm sure a lot of people don't like this, is presenters that sort of ignore the time limits or don't really think about them. They try to cram in 50 slides and they use up every last second of their time, maybe even go into the next presenter's time, and there's no time for discussion. To me, that's antisocial presentation behavior. This is antisocial. And it really is antisocial because you're eliminating any chance for a social interaction, any chance for a discussion. It literally is antisocial. It happens all the time though. Like, oh, I need to get all these slides in there. Like, I don't care what the audience has anything to say. I just need to get these slides out there. And the other funny thing is, we've all seen lots of slides, right? 2 questions. How many slides have you seen in your lifetime? Don't know. A lot. How many can you remember? 0 maybe.
So is it death by PowerPoint?
Death by PowerPoint, yeah. So that's a counter argument to like that more slides is better philosophy. It would be an interesting to exercise, a user study to say, okay, ask everybody, how many slides do you think you've seen? How many slides can you remember? It could be a startling experiment.
Do these conferences offer audio to be able to plug your laptop into an audio source that everyone will be able to hear?
Theoretically, sometimes they do. If you want audio,
You just hold your mic.
no, you have to talk to the AV people
Okay.
beforehand and say, I have audio, I need this to work. And talk to the local organizers, the day before, test it out and all that stuff.
Okay.
I did want to run the SOS signal. I thought that would be really funny if I have the beeping, the Morse code beeping. I forgot. If I remember, maybe I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
But I would need the audio for that.
I suppose you could ultimately hold your microphone to the stand, isn't it? That's
It's
an option.
dangerous.
Just in
It's
case.
dangerous because you risk getting feedback, I think, if you do that.
Yeah.
If you just hold the microphone. Maybe.
Or
Well,
my phone.
Yeah, that's an idea. I could have the SOS signal on my phone.
Because Nokia had one of their dial tones was SMS in Morse.
SMS.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So you used to get like it's 3 dots, 2 dashes, 3 dots.
Okay. Good discussion. I'm glad everybody seemed to.
Sorry,
Be
let's skip out
interested.
halfway through that.
That's fine. Any other discussions? This is a long discussion. I wasn't expecting this much. That means it's a good topic. If you get lots of feedback, it means people are interested.
Yeah.
If you get no feedback, dead silence at the end, it means the interest level is not as high, or people are thinking about something else. One thing is, this one is on Wednesday right after lunch, so some people are going to miss the beginning because they're still going to be coming back from lunch. And the EuroVis, not that it's a big deal, but the EuroVis steering committee, so 6 of the 6 very important people like Min Chen are not going to be able to see this because they're going to be at the steering committee meeting. So there are going to be like 10 important people that are going to miss it because it's always Wednesdays at that time. So some people are going to miss it, but we're going to try to record it this year.
You said that they were going to report an
Yeah.
audio version. You have to sign that.
Yeah, those audio versions, they're very good, but nobody looks at. Well, my theory is that nobody ever looks at them. It's very, very rare.
It seems strange that it's a visualization conference and they're not going to have all the visual aspects of the
Well, they do.
It's
They
just
just
story.
make sure they only take it of the slide screen of the.
Okay.
The screen
Outline,
capture. Yeah, screen
So they
capture with
don't-
audio.
So they
Okay.
don't.
It's not reliable though. Like, I've been trying to get some screen capture of some of the stuff we've done, and I haven't been able to get some things. So, for example, the death panel talk at the last VISC, I cannot find. I requested the audio feed and the slide feed of that because I would like to use it actually, but I couldn't get a hold of it. So that service is theoretically offered, but it's not a reliable service. It's a good service if it works. It's a lot better than nothing, no archive. But it's not 100% reliable, and people don't watch it very much unless it's a really outstanding. I noticed on YouTube by looking at the analytics, people prefer to see people on the screen when they're watching something. It's pretty natural, rather than just slides. Any other things going on?